Who is Shazam? What makes him unique? And in an era with so many superhero movies, why did it take so long to bring him to the big screen? Let's take a look at the world's mightiest mortal with all the stuff you need to know before you see Shazam. A secret identity is at the core of nearly every superhero. Some, like Spider-Man, keep it secret to protect their loved ones. For Shazam, it's more because when he's not being a superhero, he's literally a child. Comics can be weird. Unbeknownst to the DC universe at large, Shazam is actually Billy Batson, played in the movie by Asher Angel. After a fateful brush with mystical forces, Billy gains the ability to transform into Shazam, the world's mightiest mortal. Decades before Stan Lee rocked the comic landscape with the idea that kids could relate to teenage heroes like Peter Parker, Billy Batson was the first mainstream kid protagonist on the comic book scene. That might have been part of the reason that his stories sold better than any other characters in the 1940s, including Superman, at one point moving over 2 million copies per month. And it makes sense. What kid wouldn't want to transform into an unstoppable magical superhero? With a single magic word, Billy Batson becomes Shazam, a lightning-powered hero played in the movie by Zachary Levi. Exactly what that means, however, usually depends on who's writing the comic. While he always turns into a pile of altruistic super muscle with an A-plus jawline, Shazam himself has been a number of different things. Sometimes, like in the movie, he retains Billy's childlike mind in a superpowered adult body. In other iterations, he's a completely separate entity who magically changes places with the kid. Either way, he's got a pretty impressive set of superpowers. The magic word Shazam is actually an acrostic listing the names of the legendary figures from whom he draws his considerable powers. He has the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, the courage of Achilles, the vaguely defined power of Zeus, the stamina of Atlas, and the fantastic speed of Mercury, which is usually used to explain how he can fly. Luke had an Obi-Wan, Harry had a Dumbledore, and Shazam has Shazam. Yes, Shazam's mentor is also called Shazam. And yeah, it's awkward working with someone who has the same name as you. Wizardly superhero exploits are sort of a specialized field. You have to play the cards you're dealt.
Shazam?
You're probably going to hear the word Shazam a lot in this movie, so you might as well get used to it now. In the movie Shazam, Billy receives the power to turn into a hero named Shazam by saying the magic word Shazam, thanks to an ancient wizard who is helpfully also named Shazam. The wizard is a mystical being who guards the world from his magical cave, but you know how it goes, a couple thousand years on the job when you start feeling ready to clock out. In the comics, he summons Billy to be his new champion, granting him the aforementioned abilities because Batson is a generally decent dude with a pure heart. In the original story, the wizard is immediately and permanently squashed by a rock after handing out the superpowers, but in true Obi-Wan fashion, he occasionally returns as a wise ghost to help guide Billy. In the movie, he'll be played by Jaimin Unsu, who eagle-eyed viewers will notice has already showed up in Guardians of the Galaxy, Aquaman, and Captain Marvel. That last one's a pretty interesting note, but we'll come back to that in a second. Being a superhero is a stressful job, so it's important for a crime fighter to have a place they can call their own. Somewhere they can relax, talk to the ghost of their dad who lives in a crystal, or have their butler help them build a rocket car. You know, the stuff we can relate to.
A lair.
Yes. If you have a location like on a cliff, like a castle-esque type thing.
Overlooking some water.
Shazam's secret hideout has traditionally been the place where everything started for him, the Rock of Eternity. Like so much of Shazam's story, it's changed over the years. But generally, the facts are these: it's a magic lair, it's distinctly rocky, and it has a rad throne. In many versions, the Rock of Eternity sits in an otherworldly realm outside of space and time, joined up to our world by mystical means like the magic subway train that summoned Billy Batson to inherit his objectively awesome destiny. It's also used as a prison for magically bound enemies of the Shazam company of heroes, including the sinful septet known as the 7 deadly enemies of man. The first time Billy Batson was summoned to the Rock of Eternity, the wizard Shazam had some pretty unsettling furniture, a difficult-to-ignore collection of giant statues depicting humanity's worst vices. Surprisingly enough, they weren't just statues. They were stone prisons built to contain the demonic personas of each of the 7 deadly sins. Originally referred to as the 7 deadly enemies of man, they include pride, envy, greed, hatred, laziness, selfishness, and injustice. Once the comics code lightened up a little, they swapped the enemies of man from their name with sins, and switched out selfishness and injustice for gluttony and the definitely not code-approved lust. Needless to say, they've occasionally escaped their stone prisons, always with the intention of wreaking havoc and general bad behavior. It's been confirmed by director David F. Sandberg that they will be appearing on the big screen in Shazam, and it's easy to suspect that we'll see them as more than just a set of statues. Since its introduction in 1941, Freddy Freeman has been Billy's right-hand man. As a comic book character with an alliterative name, he was pretty much locked into getting powers at some point, and sure enough, he'd become Shazam's sidekick by the end of his first appearance. Like Billy himself, Freddy was another down-on-his-luck orphaned kid, with a disability that required him to have a crutch to walk.
You look at me and you're like, why so dark? You're a disabled foster kid, you've got it all.
In the Golden Age comics, Freddy's leg and spine were casualties of a fight between Captain Marvel and a villain named Captain Nazi. Captain Marvel, feeling 2 heaping scoops of superheroic guilt, shared his powers with Freddy, giving him the ability to transform into the ever-so-slightly condescendingly named Captain Marvel Jr. The New 52 reboot of the character was a little more rascally. A pickpocket with just a hint of jerk, he's one of Billy's foster siblings. The two become close, and Freddy eventually gets a superpowered adult persona of his own. He's played in Shazam by Jack Dylan Glazer, familiar to many viewers thanks to his appearance as Eddie in 2017's It. Dr. Thaddeus Bodog Sivana has been the conniving arch-nemesis to Shazam since day one. A moral and polar opposite to the hero, he's a small, stooped, mad scientist with his eyes perpetually obscured behind thick, round glasses. He sneers, he jeers, he brings good guys to tears. His frequent early appearances were almost always accompanied by a new contraption designed to foil his nemesis, who he delighted in calling the Big Red Cheese. Hey, that was a pretty sick burn back in 1941. Like most comic book villains, Sivana took a darker turn in modern stories, with a much more tragic origin story. After losing his family, he tries everything from science to magic to bring them back. A mystical accident grants him a magic-sensing eye, the use of which slowly decays his body. Mark Strong, who plays Sivana in Shazam, already has a superhero movie pedigree. He appeared in Kick-Ass and played Sinestro in DC's kinda regrettable Green Lantern. If Dr. Sivana is Shazam's Lex Luthor, Black Adam is his General Zod. See, the Shazam from Shazam wasn't the wizard Shazam's first Shazam. In other words, there was another guy who got powers from the wizard back in ancient times. This previous Shazam was named Adam, originally from Egypt and sometimes from the fictional nation of Kondak, but always from several thousand years ago. The wizard granted Adam powers, thinking that Adam was pure of heart. But sadly, power corrupts, and superpower corrupts superbly. Instead of a hero, he became Black Adam, a supervillain overlord on his bad days and a giant jerk of an anti-hero on the few good ones. There haven't been any official announcements with regard to Shazam, but Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has been signed on to play Black Adam for years. Could we see him in this movie? Well, no one's sure yet, but you should really know better than to leave before the credits finish if you want to find out. When DC relaunched their universe in 2011 as the New 52, all of their flagship characters got a modern reimagining. It wasn't the first time that Shazam had been updated, but it was definitely the reboot that changed him the most. That's how Billy Batson got a family. During his reboot in Justice League, he was taken in by Victor and Rosa Vasquez, foster parents who had grown up in the system. Along for the ride were Billy's new foster siblings, Freddy Freeman, Darla Dudley, Eugene Choi, Mary Bromfield, and Pedro Pena. During his climactic fight with Black Adam, Billy learned that he could share his abilities with his family and transformed all of his brothers and sisters into new, lightning, crackling, superpowered versions of themselves. Victor and Rosa are set to appear in the movie, and while Freddy's gotten the most screen time in the trailers, the Shazam siblings are along for the ride too. DC and Warner Brothers are definitely shooting for a franchise with this movie, so don't be too surprised if you see them power up by the time the credits roll too. Superhero movies always throw in a few Easter eggs for die-hard fans, and Shazam's long history has plenty of weird characters who might show up in the movie. Just in case they decide to toss in some oddballs, here's who to watch out for. Obviously, Freddy Freeman is showing up in the film, and sharp-eyed fans already know that Mary Bromfield has connection to Billy that goes back a little bit further than the other kids. But then you had sorts of superheroes like Uncle Marvel. He was just a chunky old dude dressed up in tights and hung out with a group of children. It was a different time. One of the more enduring bits of extra-strength weirdness came in the form of Talkie Tawny. When he was introduced in the 40s, Talkie Tawny was a literal tiger who learned how to talk, wear clothes, and walk on his hind legs because he wanted to be like people. He was great! There's a more modern version of the Shazam story that recast Tawny as a stuffed animal, which would give the movie an easy way to throw him in for fans. As for whether that stuffed tiger could come to life and start eating bad guys, the odds are pretty slim. But hey, you never know. If saying your own name to transform into a physical ideal seems a little self-centered even for a superhero, take a little comfort in the fact that Shazam didn't start out that way. When he was introduced in 1939, the character was called Captain Marvel, which technically makes Shazam the second Captain Marvel movie of 2019.
Wait, for real?
Here's where things get loopy. When Fawcett Comics put out their new comic book about Captain Marvel, the Shazam one, back in 1940, DC noticed a number of similarities to the character that debuted in 1938. He was a big, dark-haired dude in a cape who could leap tall buildings and had strength that could only be called super. His costume had a familiar design to it. He was even throwing a car on the cover of his first issue, which felt a little familiar to the company that had introduced Superman in Action Comics issue 1. DC sued for copyright infringement, leading to a messy dispute that ended with Fawcett out of business, and Captain Marvel going out of print for about 2 decades. In those intervening 20 years, a rival company had appeared called Marvel Comics. Since the copyright on the Captain Marvel name had lapsed, these new guys had snatched it up for their own character, who, purely by coincidence, we're sure, also changed places with a younger alter ego. After years of using Shazam as the title for comics and confusingly calling the hero Captain Marvel in the stories themselves, DC would wind up officially changing the character's name to Shazam. Meanwhile, Marvel would just keep making more and more heroes called Captain Marvel, eventually beating the distinguished competition to the screen with their latest version by about a month. Seems like the speed of Mercury only takes you so far. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite superhero movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.